Indian consumers are known to be notoriously price sensitive. Do you think that high price of these units may eventually interferes with the mass scale adoption of EVs, even the EV ride hailing services in India? How did BluSmart started?
So it's a very long journey about mobility. I've always been very excited about mobility, and all my childhood while growing up, I tried by public transport. Ola and Uber were not doing too much about it, and we thought it will be extremely challenging for them to completely shift to electric. But it was our mission to be 100% electric. We said Tata bye-bye to them on 5th December 2019, and we launched our own ride-hailing app, BluSmart. Every city has two challenges. There's finite prime real estate and there's finite power load. We have been able to connect all these dots and build out world-class EV infrastructure.
Where does India stand in this trend?
The new India wants to use clean and green vehicles. India is at an amazing stage right now, growth.
For Ola EVs is INR 1 lakh and above, right? And if I compare it with an Activa, which is also, again, a very popular two-wheeler in India, the starting range is 75,000.
In India, there are many challenges. The first is that the driver doesn't want to own a car. So in our model, the driver doesn't own the car. We have decoupled the driver from asset ownership. Glut of solar panels or too many solar panels dumped by China in Europe, and which means I kind of had to shut shop my first venture. We are not a low-quality ride-hailing service. We are a very high-quality ride-hailing service. This is the new India which is willing to pay a bit more for even better service. My advice for other people to enter the industry, obviously, will be not to compete with us.
On today's episode of The Talk Lane, I am very excited to welcome a visionary leader in the clean energy and mobility space. He is the co-founder of BluSmart, India's largest integrated EV ride-hailing service and charging infrastructure network. With over a decade of experience in clean energy and 6 years in clean mobility, he has led BluSmart to complete 17 million all-electric trips and raised over 200 million in growth capital. He's also been recognized with numerous accolades, including an honorary doctorate in business administration from Aston University in the UK. It is my pleasure today to have this one-on-one chat with Punit Goyal. Punit, thank you so much. Thank you for being on the show and agreeing to do this.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anu, for inviting me all the way. And thank you so much. It's a pleasure to always talk to you. And thank you so much for this.
I'm very excited for our conversation.
Me too.
Yeah? Okay. Awesome. So I'm going to jump straight into it. My first question to you is, tell us a bit about your journey. How did you get started in the clean energy and the mobility space?
So I've been a clean energy entrepreneur. I've started 3 companies in the past. I started off back in 2008 at a very young age. I thought of starting a solar panel manufacturing company. So between 2008 to 2012, I was manufacturing solar panels in India, in Nashik. And the idea was to make solar panels in India and export them to Europe. So we did that for 4 years. The company was called PLG Power Limited. And we could export 72 megawatt panels to Europe between 2008 to 2012. We were doing extremely well, and we achieved export revenues of close to about nearly 100 million euros at that time. And the going was great. That was my first company, so I gave it all to that venture of mine. And I was pretty young also, just 25 when I started off. And after 4 years of good success, the market kind of was crashing in Europe. And there were a string of bankruptcies in the manufacturing space at that time, given that Europe pulled the plug on solar projects. So it was completely driven by government subsidies, and large-scale solar projects were happening in Germany, Italy, and in Spain. And with the European Union in trouble at that time, they decided to pull the plug on large-scale solar projects. So in 2012, then there were, a glut of solar panels or too many solar panels dumped by China in Europe, and which means I kind of had to shut shop my first venture and look back at India. And my second venture then was about now shifting gears from manufacturing solar panels to now becoming an independent power producer or building solar power plants. India just opened its doors for building solar projects at that time, and I shifted gears from being a solar panel, manufacturer to now building solar power plants. So we built out a 20 megawatt solar power plant in the state of Gujarat. The government at that time came out with a solar policy allowing people to build solar plants there. So it was a 300 megawatt policy, and we were allocated a 40 megawatt capacity. So we built a 20 megawatt solar asset over a record time of 4 months. And we operated that solar asset for about 2.5, 3 years. And then we sold it for a good sum of $68 million. It was a decent exit. And it was called PLG Photovoltaic. Today it's operated by KKR.
Oh, wow.
KKR bought it eventually from Semcorp. They bought it from Zamil, and I had sold it to Zamil. And then I did my third venture, which is called PLG Clean Energy Projects, where we were trying to build a 70 megawatt solar power plant. But in between, I got the idea of BluSmart, and I kind of sold that midway to a large wind company. In India, they're one of the largest wind companies in the world. And that led me to BluSmart. So I've been a through and through clean energy entrepreneur. And the idea of getting into renewable energy got to me when I was studying in the UK. So I went to London School of Economics, where I studied finance, and I went to Aston University, Aston Business School, where I studied international business. And in the UK, you have to do your dissertation on a subject. So my subject was role of clean energy in developing nations, and what the role of clean energy could be, and could be a game changer. So I did my thesis on the role of clean energy in emerging and developed nations, and also did the comparative between developing nations and developed nations, and the role that the clean energy and new energy will play. And that got me excited about the subject, and finally I entered the renewable energy space. And that's how I got going about my clean energy ventures. That's all prior to founding of BluSmart.
Yeah. And how did BluSmart started? How did you find your co-founders? How did you meet them? How did that journey start?
So it's a very long journey about mobility. I've always been very excited about mobility. Growing up in a place called Calcutta, I was born and brought up in a place called Calcutta, which is in East India. It's in North 24, but my place where I was born was Baguihati. That was North 24 Parganas in Calcutta. And all my childhood while growing up, I traveled by public transport. So I was using buses and the local cabs and the local hand rickshaws and the local mode of transportation to travel. So my growing up years in Calcutta, I've always traveled by public transport. So I knew what public transport was. But it's just that I wanted, one day I always thought that I will be able to travel in a better mode of public transportation. Then life changed, and I came to Bombay, and things changed substantially for good. And so that was the first part of the love for public transport. And so something that was etched in my memory that I want to do something about in the future whenever I have the ability or capability. Second time which I got really attracted to public transport was when I was in the US in 2017. I had gone to meet and find out new ventures and new opportunities. I at that time had started doing research on the EV space. So I was at one of the exhibitions where in Abu Dhabi, where they were talking about EVs are going to be the future. And so I had, already started my work and research on the EV space in 15, 16. But in 17, when I was in the US, I had gone to see Hyperloop One. And which is this amazing technology that they were trying to build tunnels through which you can travel really fast. And the people who were running or building Hyperloop One at that time, one was Brent Callinicus. He was the CFO of that company. And when I met him in Nevada, in Las Vegas few times, and met him in Los Angeles few times, I learned that he was also CFO of a company called Uber, which he raised about $5 billion for Uber between 13, 14, 15 circa. And we got chatting on talking on the role of mobility in the future and how it will be different. And he was also of the view that mobility will be very different going forward, and electrification is imminent, and companies will find it extremely challenging to completely shift to electric. So And there are many bottlenecks for electrification. You'll need charging infrastructure. You'll have to have a born electric approach.
Yeah.
So I thought of those ideas and I started to think of a business model with three overarching themes: electrification of mobility, decarbonization of mobility, and modernization of ground transport. Now, given with my very, very past background of using tons of public transport. So I said, okay, we could probably do something very differentiating. We could build a born electric, vertically integrated business model of disruptive ride hailing with a differentiated consumer experience and build tons of EV charging infrastructure. And this nobody was doing at that time in India or anywhere for that matter, globally also. Now we have Revel in the US, in New York, but we were pre-Revel. And Revel, at the time when we started ride hailing electric cabs in India, with a similar approach to what Revel is doing, they were doing mopeds at that time. They had not still transitioned to four-wheeler EVs at that time. Revel, I think in round one were doing electric two-wheelers.
Here in United
New
States.
York.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then they shifted to using those Tesla that you see on the Revel platform. So we predate Revel also.
Oh, wow.
So it was a little early. And the whole idea at BluSmart was to build a new age mobility platform for consumers. We believe that the future was electric, and the incumbents at that time, or still today, Ola and Uber, were not doing too much about it. And we thought it will be extremely challenging for them to completely shift to electric. It may not be their mission to be 100% electric, but it was our mission to be 100% electric. So we started on the Uber platform. We reached out to Uber and we said that, look, we know that you will find it extremely challenging to go electric. We can help you. We can deploy these electric vehicles on your platform, branded BluSmart. So we deployed the first 70 BluSmart branded vehicles on the Uber platform. And we scaled that number to 300. So BluSmart scaled from 70 EVs or 70 electric cars on the Uber platform to nearly 300 cars on the Uber platform. And then we graduated from Uber's class of 2019. We said Tata bye-bye to them on 5th December 2019, and we launched our own ride-hailing app, BluSmart. And we haven't looked behind since then. I mean, we have now scaled many folds to nearly 8,250 cars, which is the largest fully electric ride-hailing fleet of Southeast Asia, of South Asia, India, and Middle East. Nobody has this kind of fleet size. In the short span of time of 4 years, we also could build out massive EV infrastructure. Today, BluSmart operates 55 charging stations, hubs, which are spread across 2.2 million square feet, spanning 2.2 million square feet with about 5,300 fast and slow charging stations across these 55 charging hubs. So massive EV infrastructure spread across 2.2 million square feet, the largest ride-hailing service of India and South Asia. Our EVs have driven 600 million electric kilometers, so 0.6 billion electric kilometers since launch. We have delivered over 20 million odd trips, so it's just phenomenal scale that we could do in the last 4.5 years.
That's massive, impressive. Brilliant work. My question to you is, you mentioned that this started from a conversation with the CFO of Uber. Why was Uber not doing this? You also spoke about jump-starting BluSmart on the Uber platform. What was their reaction? Like, I believe, I don't know exact year now, but I believe they also had their own run of wanting to onboard EV fleet and offering of EV vehicles on Uber app. So why were they open to an idea of a possible competitor getting on their platform? And I haven't actually since seen Uber going deep in this space. So can you just help me understand what happened and what do you think is happening with them in the EV space now?
So Uber believes in collaboration, and they obviously would like to collaborate with companies where they are not doing anything themselves. And I believe that India is the right place for collaboration. They also find it difficult to operate in India. It's a very difficult market to operate. And I believe that is a good approach that they are following. So hence they collaborated with us. In terms of Uber's EV ambitions, they have massive EV ambitions. It's right on their website that they want to go fully electric. But you have to be mindful of the fact that Uber is an internet company. It's just a internet platform. They do not own vehicles and they do not invest in vehicles, or neither do they invest in building charging stations. Neither do they invest in building fuel pumps or gas stations. So they have no control over the fuel. They have no control over the car. They have no control over the type of the car. They have no control over the driver. They're just a platform for aggregation.
Yes.
So while they have ambitions, they cannot really change the ecosystem, or they can't really dictate any terms to the ecosystem, because they are not building the ecosystem. They're a beneficiary of an existing ecosystem. So the existing ecosystem all this while was non-EVs. So there's so many petrol pumps, gas stations out there, so many cars on the road, which all could be aggregated on the Uber platform. So Uber essentially is an Airbnb of mobility. It's one of the most amazing companies of all time, and they helped generate millions of dollars of revenue for drivers or for people who already owned assets.
Okay.
In the world of EV adoption, one will have to create new infrastructure, will have to bring new cars on the platform. So it will be very difficult for somebody who is an Airbnb of mobility to shift to becoming an Airbnb of electric mobility.
Okay.
Because if you have to build an Airbnb of electric mobility, first EVs have to come, and you have to onboard them, and you have to build the charging infrastructure, and then you have to monetize it. So it's the 2-3 step process.
Yeah.
And in India, there are many challenges. The first is that the driver doesn't want to own a car. Bracket, it could be electric, non-electric. The driver doesn't want to own any asset anymore. Post the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, it was a different situation. Post the pandemic, we see drivers not wanting to own depreciating assets. And they don't need to go to Yale, Harvard, or Cornell to understand that. They understood very clearly after the pandemic that owning a depreciating asset doesn't make sense post the pandemic, and the cost of financing went up post the pandemic for driver partners. Second thing that really happened for driver partners that again went against the thesis was the cost of fuel went up. The cost of fuel in India was about 46 cents per kg in terms of gas. That cost went to $1.10 per kg. The cost of petrol in India was about, or gasoline, we call it in the US, petrol in India or diesel in India was about 80 cents per liter, not per gallon, per liter. And the cost went to about nearly $1.25 or $1.30 per liter. So substantial increase in the cost of gasoline, substantial increase in the cost of gas. And that led to massive headwinds for the driver partners, where they said that, okay, now we have a higher financing cost and now we have higher fuel costs. So it doesn't make sense for us to be Ola Uber drivers, right? We find it extremely difficult to now stay put in this industry. So then the biggest advantage that Uber enjoys in the US is supply side. That became the biggest disadvantage for them in India, where drivers were not willing to bring in new supply.
Yeah.
And in the EV world, they were not keen to buy an EV also, because, buying electric car is difficult. You have to find charging stations, and Uber is not building an Uber of charging. So where will they go and charge their car, right? So these are 3-4 headwinds for which we believe that the supply side completely got distorted for Uber in India. And this is where we saw a unique opportunity to build out a differentiated supply side. And our thesis was very clear, learning from Uber's highs and lows and changing times. We thought this year and this decade and the forthcoming 2 decades, and it's not about aggregation anymore. This decade and the forthcoming 2 decades is about creation of new infrastructure and creation of new assets. So we will go out, invest in building real EV assets and real EV infrastructure. We will go out and create, bring new cars on the platform, fully electric. We'll go out and build EV infrastructure, which is against the thesis of Uber, which is the internet layer of aggregation. We are not that. We are an energy, infrastructure, mobility, and technology company in alphabetical order. So we're building a full stack solution where we have tech layer that connects charging and ride hailing. We have our own full stack ride hailing platform. Then we have our own EV infrastructure network, and the technology layer connects all the dots. But it's a capex heavy business. So we do capital expenditure, we build out the charging infrastructure, and we bring electric cars. And to our advantage, we thought that we have to change and twist the model. The driver of Uber finds it extremely difficult to bring cars. So we should now, do something unique. We should try to improve their quality of life. We should create inclusive and equitable economic opportunities for driver partners. So we said, okay, we will institutionalize the entire supply side. Instead of one driver owning one car, we will go to large institutions who give us money to build solar power plants for solar manufacturing. And these are people who invest in clean technologies or large renewable energy projects. We went to them and we said, okay, would you finance EVs? We are building this platform. And they said yes. So we completely shifted from a driver come owner model, a micro entrepreneurship model, to institutionalizing the entire supply side. And that was a game changer. We could raise lots of money for thousands of cars. So we secured EV asset financing completely to institutions. And that was a game changer. And we could also use the same institutions to also build out charging infrastructure for us.
What do you mean?
Finance our charging infrastructure growth.
What do you mean by outsource it to the institutions for EV financing? Meaning the companies that are investing in BluSmart or the funds that are investing in BluSmart, do they end up financing the EVs?
Yeah. So we went to institutions who could finance us thousands of cars. In the Uber model, a driver has to bring the car on the platform and a driver can only bring one car. In case of institutions, we went to institutions and partnered with them where they could finance cars to us and we bought the cars on the BluSmart platform. So in our model, the driver doesn't own the car. We have decoupled the driver from asset ownership. We fundamentally believe that the core skill set of the driver is to drive. And driving is a very serious business. When you go behind the wheel, you should go stress-free and without any worries behind the wheel, right? So a lot of drivers are absolutely stressed all the time about thinking of how will they pay the EMI, how will they pay the cost of gas the next day, will they find customers or not? There's tremendous amount of stress that drivers have, and we believe that when you're behind the wheel, for your own safety or for the customer safety, you should not be worrying about or should not have any worries, right? So we eliminated that and we fundamentally also improved the quality of life for driver partners. We believe that the driver is not a BlackRock, driver is not a Macquarie, not a JP Morgan, not a Fairfax. A driver is just a driver. He or she just wants to drive and have a better quality of life. And with this institutional financing in place, we can obviously negotiate well with OEMs. We can buy thousands of cars, lease thousands of cars. So our negotiating power is very different because when we are financing, which is available in tons, then we can obviously go and speak to OEMs and reduce the input cost for us, economies of scale. And that was something that was little different than what was in the aggregator world of Ola and Uber. So that was needed for EV adoption. And we believe that that's the right route to follow if we were to go big in the EV space. The same applies for charging infra. We never expected any drivers to invest in charging infra. We never expected any drivers to build charging infra. So we thought we will have to go out and build the EV infrastructure and we will have to invest in the EV infrastructure given that the drivers will not invest in the EV infrastructure.
Yeah. We've spoken a lot about EV infrastructure. Can you break down this EV infrastructure for me, like end to end, across the value chain and tell me which are the parts of the value chain that BluSmart owns right now?
So we own all our cars. We own all our EV infrastructure. And obviously, we would like to own all our customers. We believe once you get used to using a BluSmart, you don't want to use anything else. And we are a customer-centric ride-hailing service, customer-first ride-hailing service. We also own our technology, most importantly. So we own energy, infrastructure, and mobility with the technology layer. And the key ingredient is the technology. We filed a patent with the US Patent Office 3-4 years ago, saying that each car, which is allocated, each fully charged car is allocated to a driver for driving. And that driver, after getting that fully charged car, can go out about and drive. And when the state of charge of the car depletes, then technology will intervene and route that car and the driver to the closest charging infra, which in layman language means real-time ride allocation on the basis of the state of charge of the asset, for which we filed a patent and nobody in the world was doing it because in the Uber world, the driver and the car doesn't share the data with Uber. Uber has no idea what the state of the charge or the state of fuel or the state of gas or the leftover gasoline in the car is. Car is not communicating any real-time data with Uber. So Uber has zilch, nada idea about it, and there's no manual intervention also to share such data. And the car keeps on shifting between Lyft and Uber in the US, and the same asset keeps shifting between Ola and Uber in India. So it's an asset which is being used by both the platforms, and there's no patronage for each of the platform. In case of BluSmart, all our cars are ours, and infrastructure is also ours. So there's real-time data sharing between the charging infrastructure and also the car and the driver. And hence we filed that patent, and we were approved. The US Patent Office gave us the patent approval 2 months back. And so I think that was a unique thing that we did. And that's also a massive big win for us, that we built a ground up technology full stack in-house, and we got a patent also approved.
That's amazing. So when you say EV infrastructure, meaning you own the charging stations, correct?
Yes.
So you guys, how does it work in India? Are these the charging stations that you have built from ground up? Is that how it is?
That's
So
right.
you buy the real estate, you set up these charging points, and that's also where I believe a lot of your assets are being stored, parked, brought back to so on and so
So
forth,
we
correct?
lease land.
Yeah.
We don't buy land. We lease land from real estate companies. We get the power connection in our name
Okay.
from the discom. We then invest in the EV infrastructure, as in the charging stations, LT cable, HT cable, the transformer, all the paraphernalia, and we build out the charging infrastructure for consumption of the BluSmart fleet. BluSmart fleet, which is a ride-hailing service, then becomes the anchor tenant to the EV infrastructure. So the utilization is underwritten by BluSmart fleet from day one. And hence all the charging infra that we have built out becomes viable from day one, because we have an in-house customer which is acting as an anchor tenant. Which also means that to leverage and to grow, we can open the infrastructure to third-party adoption. We can obviously, as the EV
Of
adoption
course.
eventually will
Yeah.
happen, they will come to us. Now that goes in the logic that where your infrastructure is. So the classic example of Starbucks and Pret. Starbucks is at all prime locations in New York and is
Yeah.
doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Pret is at all prime locations in London and is doing pretty well.
Yeah.
So if you are at prime locations, then you probably will get, customers can get access. BluSmart cars can come to you. And we believe that every city has two challenges. There's finite real estate, there's finite prime real estate, and there's finite power load. And we have been able to connect all these dots and build out world-class EV infrastructure. And that today will really help India go fully electric. So the EV infrastructure that we're building will allow the real EV adoption in India to happen. Initially with BluSmart EVs, and maybe in the next 10-15 years, over the next 10-15 years, when a lot of EVs will come on the platform, they will need the infrastructure, charging infrastructure, which is what BluSmart Charge will contribute towards.
Awesome. Yeah. This brings me to my next question. Okay. You and I spoke about this a couple of years ago. And, when we first spoke about BluSmart, my question to you then was, this is an asset-heavy, CapEx-heavy business, and it is not a VC play. And I remember having this conversation where I said, if as a VC, it is hard for me to understand the capital burn and investment in just building assets at this pace in a business that is still in its infancy, right? Unless you have huge margins and profitability. And I said, since that conversation, obviously you've gone and raised a couple of $100 million in growth capital. How has that story of VC investment in an extremely capex heavy or asset heavy business changed over the years, especially in the current times, given the high interest rate, given how VCs were extremely, extremely cautious about investing in business which had no margins or low profitabilities. How did that come around for you?
Yeah, so it was very challenging to tell people the business model, and they were used to the aggregator model, and it was not easy for them to understand. Well, they knew what infrastructure was, and they were keen to invest in infrastructure. They didn't really think that ride-hailing will need tons of infrastructure, and they didn't really need. They never thought that EV adoption was necessary. So over time, we found investors who believed in our idea. And over time, we found out clean energy investors and infra investors who were believing in our idea. So which funds like BluSmart, the funds which are energy transition funds, the funds which are clean energy funds, also with a focus on mobility, the funds which have focus on infrastructure development or building out new infrastructure. And these are the right category of investors for us. So instead of just focusing on pure vanilla VCs, which just want to profiteer from your growth, we focused on infrastructure focused investors who had more patient capital,
But that would
relatively more patient capital. And these are the people who backed us over the last few rounds of ours. Now that BluSmart is also becoming really large, it's a good consumer brand in India. Everybody knows BluSmart. We have inbound interest from the same VCs who passed us initially are circling back and saying that now we believe what your story was. So my belief always has been that you don't have to prove or build businesses for investors. You have to build businesses which have meaning or which are meaningful businesses. And everybody understands the subject. It's just that some people understand it early, some take time to understand. And it's like in a class that when a teacher teaches the class or professor teaches the class, there are 500 students in the full section. Maybe in the class there are 40-50 students. Not everybody gets it in one go. Some get it immediately, some take few months to understand the subject. So, and the same path applies in our lives, that you don't have to impress upon an investor or convince a investor to bring them. It's a journey that happens over time. And over time, you find the same believers who were earlier disbelievers, but you have to stay focused and believe in your own self and believe on what you're building. So we knew from day one that if EV adoption has to happen, it'll happen this way.
But when you say when you said infra funds, you said clean tech funds, what is their average check size? Are these like the regular VCs, or they are private equity funds, or these are like family offices? Can you just help me understand this?
Yeah, infrastructure funds, check sizes could range from, depending on the infrastructure they're investing. Typically they invest between $5 to $25 to $50 million. So BluSmart raised $25 million from Responsibility Climate Fund. Mm-hmm. They are a climate and infra fund based out of Zurich in Switzerland. Mm-hmm. And they invested $25 million in BluSmart early this year. Mm-hmm. And that was a big vote of confidence that we got. They are a very, very well reputed climate infrastructure fund. Few years ago in 2021, we first time raised money from BP Ventures, which is the venture arm of British Petroleum, which is an energy transition fund they've created. So they are oil and gas company largely, have been in the energy business for decades. And now they realize that the future is beyond oil and gas. And you will have to make investments in EV infrastructure. You have to back electric vehicles. The future could be also of hydrogen and other emerging technologies. So BP carved out a venture fund called BP Ventures, which is an energy transition fund investing in emerging and new technologies. So they invested in BluSmart. Another large French climate fund is coming in BluSmart shortly. And we have raised money from tons of family offices and also some other smaller VCs like Green Frontier Capital. Again, a very climate-focused investor. So they are also on the cap table of BluSmart, large investor in BluSmart, and a new fund based out of New York and Mumbai. So we have got investor interest from these kind of investors. Also, we could raise money from Indian large institutions like IREDA, which is Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency, multi-billion-dollar DFI. These are development financial institutions. We could also raise debt, long-term debt for financing vehicles from Power Finance Corporation, PFC, which is again a multi-billion-dollar, multilateral institution, a large DFI, development financial institution. And the thesis is to invest in India's clean energy story and India's clean mobility story. So historically, that's been a background. Now that the company is scaling rapidly, we today are doing about nearly $75 million in ARR, in annualized revenue run rate. And I remember 3 years ago when our series round happened, we were doing $1 million in ARR. So the jump has been massive. We've really leapfrogged from a 1 million ARR to 75 million ARR. And the journey will be over the next 2 years to 300 million, kind of ARR, or in about 3.5 years, we should achieve that kind of ARR. 3 years time, we should easily achieve that kind of ARR. And this is where we believe that more and more consumer funds now and funds which are more than infra investors, consumer funds, growth funds. They are now reaching out to BluSmart on the premise that we have demonstrated tremendous growth.
Yeah.
We have built the infrastructure that is visible now. And because it's a very asset heavy business, we have underlying assets, so which are all visible. So our cars are visible on the road, our infrastructure is visible on the road. So all that we were talking and we were trying to share our knowledge is actually demonstrated now. We have
Yeah.
delivered that kind of scale, and we've delivered that kind of infrastructure which is visible for all to see, for consumers to enjoy, for investors to see, for the country to benefit from. So it's a true dedication to the nation that we are doing. It's completely going to change the landscape of the country.
Yeah.
And somebody has to take that leap.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll inspire other companies to do it. Maybe we are inspiring ourselves also. But it's just that the opportunity is way too massive.
Yeah. So, changing gears slightly here from talking about BluSmart to talking about consumer mindset for EVs. In Europe, sustainability and decarbonization efforts seem to cut across all socioeconomic stratas. Okay, so it is not subject to how well you're doing socioeconomically. It is something that everyone across that strata cares about. In United States, though, these concerns often correlate with the individual's social and economic standing. So an individual with high income, high net worth, highly educated, very stable job in liberal states, likely to be more environmental conscious and would want to own and invest in EV for the long-term sustainability of the climate. Where does India stand in this trend? Where does an average Indian consumer stand from socio-economic strata perspective and their perception and adoption of EVs and EV ride-hailing services?
I think India is one of the largest beneficiaries of technology. India is really enjoying that upside right now. The new India wants to use clean and green energy. The new India wants to use clean and green vehicles. India is at an amazing stage right now, growth. The government is very clear that the new energy generation that will happen in India between now over the next 30 years will be completely renewable energy. India historically in 1995, many years ago, the energy mix of India was 99% coal-based, 1% non-coal-based. If we see the energy mix of India today in 2024, is 50% or 51% coal-based and 49% non-coal-based. That number is projected by 2035 will be other way around. 30% of all India's energy mix and energy generation capacity pulled in together will be coal-based. 70% will be non-coal-based. So for a country of the size and might of India to go from 1% or below, clean energy to nearly 70% non-coal-based energy generation, includes hydro, wind, solar, nuclear, biomass. It's an amazing transformative journey, and it just goes to show what could be done at scale if the policies and the approach is right. Similarly, what is also now really triggered the EV adoption in India is the necessity. And necessity is always mother of invention, right? So it is necessary for India to leapfrog to become a global EV player. Given that India depends on import of fuel. India doesn't have the repository of massive oil fields. So we import, India the country imports 80% of the crude that is used in India for industrial businesses, for transportation, and basically for industry and for transportation. And the cost of crude is increasing. The cost of refining this crude is also increasing in India. The cost of gas, petrol, and diesel has gone up by 2.5x or 2.2x post the pandemic in last 4 years. And it's projected that the cost will go beyond the reach for transport as an industry to use this kind of fuel. So then the government took a judicious call a few years ago, half a decade ago, that we must go fully electric in order to lower our dependency on import of crude oil. And it was a calculated decision taken by the government that let's go fully electric, let's come out with policy and policy measures So the faster adoption for electric mobility FAME policy was launched by the government of India, and where they really promoted use of EVs in two-wheelers, three-wheelers, for four-wheelers, buses, electric buses for public transport, for cars, for transportation platforms like Uber, Ola, BluSmart to go fully electric. They pushed all ride-hailing platform in India to go electric, or public transport modes like buses to go electric. I think as a decision that was a great one, and that really put India on the track towards thinking about going electric, because that's a clear mandate that the government laid down. And while they were entrepreneurs like us who were also thinking on the same lines, it was the right collaborative approach. We all had a think tank and we discussed with the government. I was also chair of the CII, now the Confederation of Indian Industries for Mobility as a Service, and contributed towards this think tank for this approach towards the government. And with this collaborative approach, we, I think, are on the path to becoming one of the largest EV adopters in the whole world, given that India is of the size of India. If we have to go electric in two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, I think it's a huge, huge opportunity for us to go electric. So it's a clear government-driven mandate and the business-driven mandate that we have to go electric. It's great for the city, it's great for the country, and it is necessary because there's no other way for us.
Yeah.
There's no substitute for you not to go electric. Electrification is imminent. Decarbonization is necessary. So what BluSmart did was something which was necessary and imminent, we combined it. Electrification was necessary, but we said, okay, while we electrify, we must also truly become, we truly decarbonize. So we will also not use non-clean energy. We partnered with Tata Power Renewable, a company with which we partnered for accessing, getting access to 72 million units of clean and green energy. We signed a 32 megawatt power purchase agreement for solar, which translated into getting access to 72 million units of clean and green energy annually, which we use to power our charging infrastructure, which we use to then power BluSmart EVs. So right from clean energy consumption or offtake to clean energy consumption in our charging infra to powering our EVs, we are truly decarbonizing the mobility landscape. So our energy is green, and we are using EVs which have zero emissions anyways.
Yeah, but
and the third part of our overarching mandate was modernizing the ground transport. They were really old, shabby cars on the road. We got these brand new EVs, green and clean, noiseless. So, yeah.
But how? Where does an Indian consumer stand here, right? Like, what is their perception, or how has the mass scale adoption of EVs or clean energy generally kind of resonated with Indian consumers?
I think India is coming of age, and the Indian public in mega cities of India realize the value of EVs in terms of operating costs. People who travel long distances or travel throughout the day, travel a journey of say 50, 100, 200 kilometers, they really understand the fuel cost in India is going really high. So shifting to electric makes absolute economic sense for everyone. In terms of availability of electric models or EV cars, there were not too many out there until 2 years back or 3 years back.
Yeah.
Just last year and this year, OEMs in India, auto OEMs or automobile manufacturers now were pressed by the Indian government that you have to now roll out EV models and you have to go electric. Also, they saw that Indian buyers were not buying enough ICE cars or internal combustion engine cars, normal cars, because the cost of fuel was shooting up.
Yeah.
So it was a calibrated approach again, a judicious call they took to starting to manufacture more EV models and rolling out. The more EV models that are being rolled out, the more customer confidence coming in to buy more EVs because they see more models available, more different types of cars available. Second change that really happened, radical change that happened over the last 2-3 years was building of EV infrastructure. So EV infrastructure wasn't there pre-pandemic, right? So nobody could have shifted to EVs. Now there's substantial amount of EV infrastructure which is being built by the government, by companies like BluSmart. There's some standalone EV infrastructure companies also which are building EV charging stations. Plus there is now technology where you can charge your car at home. So you don't need to ever visit a fuel pump. You can visit a charging station, but maybe also not. If you can charge your car at home, you may not even need to go to a third-party charging station, depending on the use of your car and how much you use it. And the fourth thing that happened was longer range cars. So we have seen a great evolution in the range of the car increasing substantially over the last 4 or 5 years. Gen 1 cars had about range of about sub 100 kilometers on a single charge. Gen 2 cars became 100 to 150. Gen 3 between 150 to 200. Gen 4 now is about 200 to 250 kilometers. And Gen 5 cars are not of 300 kilometers. And in a city, intra-city travel is never 300 kilometers. You can never ever travel more than 300 kilometers intra-city within the city. Gen 5, Gen 6, 7 cars are even longer range, which are 500 to 600 kilometers. So if you have to travel distances between two cities in India, I mean, largely those are between 200 to 300 kilometers. So the range anxiety is completely gone off. And which with adequate amount of intercity EV infrastructure being built out by the government or standalone, oil and gas companies also setting up these kind of charging stations at their own gas pumps, this will further wade out. So we believe that over the next half a decade, we will see real mass adoption in terms of mass adoption of EVs, cars, but we already see tremendous amount of EV adoption in the 2 and 3-wheeler space. So by regulation, the government said that all 2-wheelers should be electric immediately with the immediate effect, and time was given of 24, 36 months to do. Every single 2-wheeler on the road now is getting electric. People are buying the first 2-wheeler or the second 2-wheeler or the third 2-wheeler of their life as electric. All 3-wheelers are now mandated to be electric. No licenses are being issued by the governments for 3-wheeler operators if they don't drive an electric 3-wheeler. So we will see over the next half a decade complete 100% adoption of electric vehicles in the 2 and 3-wheeler landscape. Maybe it'll take about 10 or 15 years for complete adoption in the 4-wheeler space. That will take further time because you'll have to build out tons of EV infrastructure for 4-wheelers. In case of 2 and 3-wheelers, they are beneficiary of the fact that you can do battery swapping, which is easily available, or you can do battery swapping at home, or battery swapping stations are coming up and they don't require such large investments. In case of 4-wheelers, especially cars and buses, to charge and power a massive bus network, electric bus network, or electric cars like Revel in the US, in New York, or BluSmart in India, you will need tons of EV infrastructure. So you will have to go out, build out these large EV charging hubs and make that large investment for an upfront investment, which is kind of not everybody's cup of tea. So this is why we believe that it'll take slightly longer for the electric car adoption to happen in India, but it'll eventually happen. It's just about time.
Yeah, I think so. You spoke a lot about government mandate and how that is kind of having or leading to mass adoption in India. And I hear a lot about, India's EV aspirations, both from private and public sector. And I see these amazing stats, which is like, just in 2023, 1.5 million EVs were sold in India. And that was like a 50% uptick from what the numbers were last year. However, that is still a fraction of 271 million two-wheelers sold in India at present. Now, Ola EV is available. And I know a lot of my close family and friends who've bought it. An average price or the starting range for Ola EVs is INR 1 lakh and above, right? And if I compare it with an Activa, which is also, again, a very popular two-wheeler in India, the starting range is 75,000. Indian consumers are known to be notoriously price sensitive. And this is something which you see from a lot of new age public listed tech companies where they see their margins drop drastically overnight, even if they move the price point to just about 25 basis points, right? So do you think that high price of these units may eventually, or even now, interferes with the mass scale adoption of EVs? And by that logic, even the EV ride hailing services in India?
So I'm not in the two-wheeler and the three-wheeler space. Neither I'm going to defend Ola Electric and their pricing strategy, but I can give you my economic mind. Largely, we believe that there are two Indias. One is India as a country where the GDP per capita is $2,400 per capita as a country, and that India is price sensitive. We see China's GDP per capita is about $11,300, so which is 5 times India's GDP. But now there are 3 cities, which are the 3 mega cities of India, Delhi NCR's GDP per capita is $7,000. Bangalore's GDP per capita is $25,000. And GDP per capita of Mumbai is about $10,000. So the GDP per capita of these three cities is almost equal to the GDP per capita of China. And this is India 1.0. And this India has a lot of disposable income. People want to have better quality of life. And these three cities of India have the same GDP per capita of the second largest economy in the world, closer to US economy. And this is where we believe that people are not price sensitive, they're quality sensitive. They are not price sensitive, they're time sensitive. And these are people who are more worried about T of time and Q of quality than worry about, the price index for that matter. And for them, quality and time is paramount. And if you deliver a good quality service, they will take it. Good for Starbucks and good for these kind of brands who are making, well in India, doing well, they're servicing and providing good quality. And if you provide good quality and a good product, I think that can be sold. And there is no better time than now. So I think maybe Ola Electric is a big beneficiary of this trend, which is happening: masstige adoption, premiumization adoption, very high levels of disposable income post the pandemic. The spend on products and services have really zoomed in. And I think Ola Electric and companies like them are huge beneficiaries of this. Now, that also applies to BluSmart. We are also a premium service than compared to our competition.
Yeah.
We are not a low quality ride-hailing service. We are a very high-quality ride-hailing service.
Yeah.
So, with due respect to Malaysian Airlines, Singapore Airlines, it's different being a Malaysian airline, different being Singapore Airlines. So we are providing that elevated, superior customer experience to our customers, and the same customers who have been happily using Uber as happy or unhappy customers are very, very happy customers on BluSmart.
Yeah.
And once they shift to a BluSmart, they never leave us. My LinkedIn inbox is inundated with messages from customers and why they use BluSmart and why they want to use BluSmart. And it's an amazing feeling to read about the customer love and appreciation. And the only thing they say is that add more cars, keep improving your service from where you are, and we are willing to pay more. That's against the trend of that you want to shop for something cheaper. This is the new India which is willing to pay a bit more for even better service.
Yeah.
And this is the trend that will be there for the next 20, 30 years as India leapfrogs and continues to be on the same growth curve and become the third largest economy in the world after the US and after China. And we're on the clear path to do that. And India is nearly a $4+ trillion economy now, soon touching $5 trillion, and then is projected to touch $12 trillion by 2032. And eventually catch up to China in about 20 years' time. So I think it's very different now. The price parity, the thought process of this, the trinity I mentioned, Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore, these three cities, is absolutely different. Here it's not about price sensitive people, it's about quality sensitive people or time sensitive people who are more worried about saving time and who are more worried about high quality that they want.
But so from your conversation, it seems like a lot of these clean tech, climate tech, EV adoption is still restricted to tier 1 cities in India. Yeah. And which means that for it to be a true India story to the ground level, that is going to be a very long journey from now. Is that correct? Have I understood that correctly?
I think that's a hybrid approach here. The tier 1 cities will play the role of mass EV adoption, the four-wheelers space, because that's where four-wheelers will play an incredible part. The 2 and 3-wheelers will support the tier 2 and tier 3 cities of India. So EV adoption is imminent and will happen throughout India with different form factors. So the form factor of EV adoption in tier 1 will be largely electric buses and electric cars. That will play a very important role in tier 1 cities. And tier 2 and tier 3 cities will be the beneficiary of electric 2 and electric 3-wheelers. But EV adoption is happening at the same level across all cities right now.
Got it. That brings me to my next question. So, globally, there's a lot of chatter about how government needs to be deeply involved and roll out strong regulatory and policy infra for the mass adoption of EVs. In some countries, it is considered a very imperative step to combat climate change. How actively is Indian government, involved in building these policies, infra, and regulations to address the larger issues of climate change? I know you touched upon it briefly, but if you can just elaborate on some of the key initiatives that you've seen government has taken to kind of make it a regulatory mandate.
Yeah, so government, came out very strongly, starting with the state government of Gujarat in the year 2010, 11, where they said that solar is the way forward, and they came out with a very futuristic solar policy, which allowed the state government to buy 600 megawatt of solar energy from independent power producers at a very high price. But that was necessary for the state to kind of really accelerate the solar adoption. The central government followed suit, and they came out with the National Solar Mission, under which they said that India should go fully renewable, and solar and will play a very important role. Over the last 10 years, or I would say 14 years since that National Solar Mission was announced in 2010, India has added nearly 160 gigawatts or 160,000 megawatts of renewable energy projects. And India's goal now is to scale that projects to 500 gigawatts by 2030 and to 750 gigawatts by 2032. So substantial amount of solar energy, renewable energy infrastructure is yet to be built out in India, and it's a massive opportunity for renewable energy companies and entrepreneurs to really contribute towards India's clean energy ambitions. In the case of mobility, the government has been working towards setting goals and targets. It's just that pre-pandemic or post-pandemic, they realized the importance of it even more. So they came out with FAME policy that came out actually prior to the pandemic, when they understood that the reliance of India over crude import was only increasing substantially. And India's crude import bill in 2019 was $60 billion. That leapfrogged to $120 billion in 2023. So in just 4 years' time, India's crude oil import bill doubled. And it's forecasted that will touch $200 billion if we don't invest in EV infrastructure. So though you can invest that 60, 70, 80 billion in India for creating EV infrastructure, for pro-EV policies, for accelerating EV manufacturing in India, that money will ultimately stay in India instead of keep going outside to import oil and crude. So this is where the key mandate of the government is now to accelerate EV adoption. And they believe that India is self-reliant. We can use renewable energy, the power of sun and wind, to create energy, which in turn can power the charging infrastructure, which in turn power EV. So it's a full ecosystem that is within, and you can then become self-reliant and in energy access. And this is exactly the key long-term goal of the government, for which they have sowed the seed. They have created pro-industry policy or pro-market policies, which can be used by any company or entrepreneur to or any overseas company also to invest in India. But these are the initiatives that the government took. They launched the FAME policy, which is fast adoption for electric mobility. They reduced GST from 18% to 5% on buying cars. If you buy a non-EV, you pay 18% GST. If you buy an EV, you pay 5% GST. They removed registration charge. So you had to pay about 7 to 8% of the cost of the car was registration charges. That was completely waived off for using EVs, or if you are investing in EVs or buying an EV. So these key policy measures were taken to accelerate the EV adoption. Also, government reduced GST on charging infrastructure. Investment was about 18%. They got it down to 5%. Initially, they were charging the charging infrastructure business also, but they realized that without which the EV adoption will not happen. So they reduced GST there. And all this helped the ecosystem to come up.
Makes sense. What advice would you give to a young entrepreneur who wants to venture in the clean mobility or EV space, given the rapid rise of technology and its popularity globally?
In terms of my advice for other people to enter the industry, obviously it'll be not to compete with us, but on the funny, on the light side. But I think there are massive opportunities out there for battery recycling,
Yeah.
for creating EV infrastructure, second life of the battery, for manufacturing components for EVs or to manufacture an EV only. If people want to jump in and manufacture two-wheelers, which Ola did, they were a ride-hailing company which migrated and transitioned to becoming a OEM, or electric two-wheeler manufacturer. It was a huge shift for them. They had no historical background of manufacturing electric vehicles. So we believe that new age companies will come up from ground up and they will build out electric vehicles, electric components for those vehicles as a supply unit or support unit, rather, and recycling the battery, second life of battery, building out EV infrastructure. I think these are great opportunities. Should not compete with BluSmart for sure. And also maybe they can supply EVs to us. They can invest in something called BluSmart Assure, where people can invest in EVs and deploy it on the BluSmart platform. I think financing EVs is a great business opportunity as
Yeah.
well. NBFCs, banks, institutions, or non-banking finance companies or new age finance companies can invest in EVs or finance EVs to so many more people who want to buy EVs.
Yeah.
I think financing of EV infrastructure will be also a great business opportunity. I
Yeah.
think these are some of the good opportunities in the EV space.
Yeah.
And some could be the operator, some could be also doing maintenance, repairs. I think O&M work, operations and maintenance, repairs of the car, or garages only specially for EVs, where these workshops could maintain EVs and operate them, or probably
Yeah.
do course correction or any wear and tear repair and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you were to summarize the outlook of EV landscape globally, what would that be?
I think EV adoption largely is happening in countries where it is necessary for it to happen. For example, China in Asia and India in Asia. These are two large economies of the world who have huge responsibilities to shift to electric, given that they have limited finite resources of crude. And so they, in order to boost their economy further, they have to shift to electric. Second big responsibility for these two countries is that they also are massive polluters, and they have now a huge responsibility to decarbonize their own countries and decarbonize two of the largest greenhouse gas emitting sectors. One greenhouse gas emitting sector is transportation, which needs to be decarbonized. And second big sector is energy. So energy and transport globally contributes 50% of the total greenhouse gas emissions globally. The same is also applicable for India and China. In case of India and China, I think these two sectors contribute nearly 55% of the total greenhouse gas emissions. And so it is very important for these two countries to go fully electric. So these two countries will play a very important role for EV adoption to happen globally. Other countries we see in Europe where they understand the need for going electric. It may not be necessary to go electric, but they understand that it's very important for transportation to go electric because it does not create any more emissions. And these are countries which are taking right steps at an early stage. And these are like Norway, Finland, Sweden, UK, we see for that matter, Germany. These are countries which are going, or France for that matter, they are taking steps, necessary steps to Switzerland. They are taking necessary steps to go electric. In the US, we see massive technology upside, and we are seeing, and obviously Tesla was born in the US, but it scaled rapidly because of their entry in China.
Yeah.
And the technology is born in the US, and it's a mixed feeling in the US. EVs are playing a very important role and is necessary at the same time. And but because there is oil available or there are other alternate sources available, so it may not be so urgent need for US to immediately shift to electric, although it will eventually also shift to electric.
Yeah.
But so that's how we're seeing the global landscape in terms of EVs. Some countries where we have no option, like India and China. Some countries and continents which understand the importance of it
Yeah.
and are shifting to electric. That's Europe, and some which are creating emerging technologies and are giving and are creating those game changing technologies. That's US, and obviously all the money is also available here. The financing is available, but there are too many options. So with so much power, so many options, being the global leader in technology, US is playing its waiting card, went to 100% shift to electric. But there are
Yeah.
some game-changing companies like Revel and others which are also going electric here and taking that step forward. But with the mighty US, they may take its own time to go electric, and
Yeah.
there's no hurry for the US to do that. But India is not the US. India is very small in terms of in terms of country size, in terms of economy size. So we have no option but to go electric.
Yeah.
And we can't go electric when US will do. We can probably take the lead, and US
Yeah.
may follow us there, or US may become a support partner,
Yeah.
or may support India to go electric.
Yeah.
So I think that's the global landscape of EVs.
Yeah. Clearly, you're too deep into this space. You pretty much know. I mean, I have had an amazing conversation with you. I will walk out of this conversation learning so much about EVs, learning so much about clean tech, climate tech, batteries, so on and so forth across the infrastructure. And clearly, you're doing great work with BluSmart. What is your vision for your life in the coming 10 years or later?
I think keep contributing towards building something for the country. I think clean energy access is important. Clean mobility access for masses is important. So focus some more years in building out the key EV infrastructure for the country, and post then also seriously think about investing in other companies. Also shift gears and become maybe an investor.
Yeah.
Back other young upcoming companies and entrepreneurs who can make meaningful changes to the global economy and also to India, and maybe in the field of AI, clean energy, clean mobility. I think these are the three sectors which will define the future. The future will be dependent on how the humanity uses energy resources well, and how we use our transportation needs well, and how we depend on or create or invest in AI and other technologies which can be game changing for the future for the benefit of humanity, and find more companies like that. Maybe we don't know too much about it.
Yeah.
Maybe we will know over the next coming few years, and I think play a part there as an investor or shareholder, stakeholder in those companies, and learn from them. I think learning should not stop. Learning should go on, and didn't know much about EVs 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and maybe I know a little bit right now. I don't think so. We as a company in BluSmart haven't scratched the surface as yet. There's lots to scratch and lots below the surface.
Yeah.
So we have to do a lot more, and still, like Jeff Bezos says in Amazon, is still day one. So I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of Amazon and Jeff Bezos, and what he has built out in the world is phenomenal. I think it's still day one at BluSmart, and we're still learning from people. And I think that curiosity is very, very important for us to stay on this path, and for me also to be on this path.
So do we expect a PLG investment fund from you anytime soon?
I don't know about it, but maybe sometime in the future.
Well, actually, you haven't spoken about something. And
It
to
may
many,
not be called PLG, but it may be also. But I think BluSmart is doing pretty well. So something to do with blue, maybe Indigo Fund. I don't know, but
Yeah.
but yeah.
But I think we didn't speak about it. The PLG was actually named after your grandfather.
Yeah. My
Right?
first,
That was like the first company
my
was
first
named
few
after your
ventures
grandfather.
were named after his initials,
Yeah.
and he had passed away in April 2007 when I was a student, and I thought, okay, when I start my ventures, maybe I should have the initials, his three initials, as the starting of all my companies.
Yeah.
And three letters are cool. Normally you have companies in India, RIL or
Yeah.
ABC or
Yeah.
TBC or whatever it is, or ABC Network or CNBC or whatever. So 3 and 4, letters kind of stand
Yeah.
out. So that also played out well. But yeah.
Yeah. Puneet, this was a wonderful conversation. I cannot wait to see you start your own fund and do some amazing stuff going forward. And I wish you so much more luck with BluSmart, and I wish you would definitely be very successful in taking it to another level. Thank
Thank you
you
so much.
so
Thank you.
much for joining me on the show today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.